A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to this week's episode of Law and Order. And Law and Order, as always, wishes to bring law in a way that everyone can understand, in a way that the normal person, individual who deals with the law in their day-to-day lives can get an understanding or to get a comprehensive knowledge about the law and its aspects. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to discuss on something very important, and that is the rights of the child. And in order to discuss this timely topic, we have someone who has been working in this field for many years. So we are happy to welcome to Rupavahini Channelized Studios, Mrs. Milane Salpitikorala, attorney at law,
Thank you.
founder of the Child Protection Force. It's a great honor to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So let me first ask you the question. Now, when we were discussing on what we should discuss in today's program, the issue of institutionalized children is something which a lot of people don't talk about, but is a major concern in Sri Lanka. So first let me ask you, for people who don't know, what do you mean by the term institutionalized childcare?
Okay, so institutionalized childcare, in very layman's terms, would be a child in an orphanage, okay, which is a word that people like us, we don't like to use. We don't like to use the word orphan, because I believe that, we are all parents of all children, whether they're biological or not. So this is actually a major concern in Sri Lanka. I'll start off with giving you a statistic from 2017, where 10,700 plus children were admitted into probation homes.
Per year, that is.
For the 2017 year only. And out of that, only 678 children were adopted. So again, over 10,000 children are still in the homes. So there are various reasons why these children are placed in these homes. So the law which is related to that is the Children and Young Persons Ordinance. So within that law, there are three types of categories of children who go into this. Of course, children who are victims of a crime. So if their, say, home environment is no longer safe, the court would order for these children to be placed in a home. There are also children in need of care. So maybe not exactly a crime has been committed against this child, but say, for example, if this child's parents are drug addicts or drug dealers, and we know that this child is not safe, so then an order can be obtained to place this child in a home. And the third category is the children who we name as offenders. So these can be children who steal a banana from a shop, and this goes on to the police, and it goes way too far, and it goes to the point of court, and then this child is placed in a home. But out of this also, these children who have been named as offenders, 44% of them are in these homes because they have been carrying drugs. So this is a major concern these days, since as of even last year the statistics were the same, and it was very high, because these children are taken in as, so if somebody identifies a child who is, well, a little bit neglected by the parents, they will bring this child into a circle of drug transporters, and these children thereafter continue to become drug transporters. If they are caught, they come into the system. If they are not, they themselves become drug addicts, prostitutes, yeah.
And also, now you spoke about in what situation these children are sent to orphanages. What can you tell about their condition, their facilities? Does Sri Lanka have enough orphanages to house them, and is it monitored by the government?
So institutions come under the probation department. They have to be registered under the probation department. Right now, I think, I'm not sure of the exact statistic, but I think there are about 10,000 homes in the whole of Sri Lanka, and most of them are overcrowded. So
And these are privately owned as well as governmentally?
So even if it is privately owned, if you are housing children, then you have to register under the probation department. And of course, they have their criteria, and they will come and take a look and register it. Ideally, supposed to be monitored by the probation department, which is monitored by the Women and Children's Ministry. So, with regard to this, I think there are some concerns. There are some good homes, I'd say definitely, but also quite a lot of concerns about some homes that are not monitored properly, and certain instances where, I mean, the officers working inside, the manipulations that happen where the children are subject to secondary victimization, I'd say. So they come into the system because they are a victim of crime, and then within this home they are victimized further.
And also, let me also ask you, what are concerns you have as a lawyer, as a person who is an activist who works in the field of child rights? What are the concerns you have when it comes to institutional care? What are the long-term problems and the short-term problems you see in this system?
Right. So one of the major concerns is we have children in these homes, in the institutions, who need not be there. So for example, there are certain parents who have to go to work, I'd say low income. So they prefer if the child is kept in an orphanage so that they can go to work outstation, or wherever, so that they think the child is being fed and taken care of. But they don't realize the psychological trauma this child is going to go through, be it a boy or a girl, when the child is being placed in a home. See, because now Sri Lanka has a alternative care policy, and these things, the care policy, which is not also, I think, passed yet, but it concentrates on a more holistic approach towards childcare, where the institution is not like an institution, it's not like a boarding school. Rather, it's like it has a home environment, where children are, for example, the SOS Children's Village, they have houses, and each house has a mother. So the mother has her children. So these are children who have been put through the system, but then this child lives in a home environment, goes to school. So this is the type of alternative care that we need to look for. So as it is more like a really strict Mrs. Trenchbull kind of boarding school, where also physical abuse, and we know few cases of sexual abuse also happens to children, and definitely the mental abuse or the trauma that children go through. Also, if things like where these officers can be trained on child rights. Sri Lanka is a signatory to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So what Sri Lanka needs to understand is that by being a signatory and the Committee on the Rights of the Child making a comment, it doesn't mean that our country is going to be punished or penalized. It just means that the committee is ready to help the state with advice. So yes, you have a problem with your monitoring systems in your homes. Give us your recommendations so we can assist you with that. That's the whole point of the convention, and being a signatory of the convention is. But for some reason we don't seek for this help as a state. So I believe there are many problems in our system with regard to institutions especially, and as a collective group, as actors of the whole system of juvenile care, that we need to get together and start working on it.
And also now you mentioned that Sri Lanka has signed the Child Rights Convention. So that is an international agreement. So
Correct.
What legal or statutory provisions are there globally and in Sri Lanka for the protection of these children who are at a risk of being faced with psychological, physical abuse or sexual abuse, and even victimization from the society, because there is a certain level of stigma for those who are in institutions when it comes to society, when it comes to education or taking up jobs.
Absolutely.
So in that context, what protection can the law of Sri Lanka offer? What protection can the international conventions and framework offer?
So Sri Lanka in itself has some good laws for children. I mean, the Children and Young Persons Ordinance, it's old law, it's old British law. But it's good law, right? There are certain things that need change in it. Things like, so there is a certain section that says media cannot publish certain parts of a child-related case. We don't see that here, obviously, but now that talks about print media only. So if those certain laws can be changed into e-media and television and all that, because one of the major things we see for children being re-victimized is the media as well. I mean, as much as it's good to make awareness of positives, the fact that child rights cases, their families, their homes, their schools are all being exposed may not be in the best interest of the child. So speaking of best interest, the ICCPR Act of Sri Lanka also speaks about the best interest of the child, where all institutions who are part of, say, a child's case or a, juvenile justice matter need to keep in mind the best interest of the child. So these are good laws. So when Sri Lanka also signed the convention in 1991, we are under an obligation to make sure that these convention rights are available for Sri Lankan children. And we are also under an obligation to send a report on how well we are abiding by these convention rules. So this report has to be sent every 5 years by the state. So yes, there are good laws available, but I believe maybe if all parties get together and work together under one umbrella, we can achieve way more than where we are right now.
And also, when it comes to children who are in institutional care, what are the governmental bodies who are responsible for the well-being of the children, the welfare of the children, the protection of the children, and to ensure that these institutions are up to standard and proper guidance is given to children? What are the authorities? And then if a viewer who is watching our program today sees a situation where an institution is, let's say, treating a child badly, or if there is a violation of his rights, or if there is some sort of child abuse, where can he or she complain?
Okay. So there are many organizations. The probation department is the monitoring organization, and all homes come under the probation department. The NCPA, National Child Protection Authority, has jurisdiction over children. So any complaint can be made to the National Child Protection Authority. You can also inform your area police department, and where you inform is the Women and Children's desk of the department. Some police stations don't have this desk, so you can then inform the Women and Children's Bureau head office of the police. And I can, with personal experience, I can tell you that they're working very hard towards achieving, a certain goal with the rights of the child. And also there are lots of other organizations. There is also one person that most of us don't know about, is called a District Child Development Officer. So this officer is in the District Secretariat office, that's where they're placed, but they of course, they are in charge of the well-being of the children around that particular district. And there are a lot of civil society organizations like Child Protection Force, like ourselves, Care Station, Voice Foundation, a lot of organizations who work for children. So even if one of these calls come to us, we will also direct it through the legal process, the police or the NCPA or whatever, but we will also make sure that we follow up. So whoever the complainant is, I mean, if you are seeing a child going through something, please stop. Please stop, take time off your schedule and attend to that child. I mean, you don't have to personally bring the child home, but refer that child to the necessary authority and make sure that there is a follow-up being done.
And also, now you spoke about in the year 2017 there were 10,000 plus admissions to institutions. However, there were only a very less number of adoptions. Is there a reason for this, or is the adoption procedure difficult, or does it have a lot of red tape and therefore the adoption rate is low, or what is the reason for less number of adoptions in Sri Lanka? And why doesn't the government take up, a stance or a campaign to promote adoption?
Yeah. So answering your last question, I really don't know why there is no campaign, but I know the procedure is a little arduous. I mean, we have had quite a few adoption cases coming in. So there is a setback within also the probation department with their reports. It takes a long time, and you have to be registered as a prospective parent in this probation department, and they will select a child for you, and thereafter the court case will continue. So what happens in this is, I know parents who have been in this queue for over 5-6 years and who haven't even received a call. So my question also lies in the air, saying, why isn't this fast tracked? Because I know for a fact that there are many children waiting to go into a home environment, but there is a problem with the process. And also I feel that the law, which is very clear in black and white, but certain circulars and certain internal regulations that have come in within departments itself is the cause of this setback. So for example, the law section 1 itself says any person desirous of adopting a child, and thereafter of course the conditions come in, but it is any person. So you don't have to be married, you can be a single parent, you don't have to be heterosexual, okay, you can be whatever you want to be if you want to adopt a child and you have those certain conditions, and your probation report is fine. So the probation officer comes to your house and checks on your financial reports, checks on your police reports and all that to see if you are a suitable parent, and then we'll make the recommendation to court and say this is a suitable parent. So if all these mechanisms are in place, why not?
So it's a matter of changing government policy to ensure that this system is fast tracked and it's more feasible.
Exactly, yes.
And also that brings me to the next question, which is now in Sri Lanka, you said that these children who are placed under institutional care are given proper guidance and certain level of there is some monitoring from the government. From your practical aspect, what are the issues which usually arise when it comes to institutional children? Now you're a practicing lawyer, you encounter these issues on a day-to-day basis. So would you be able to share a few, what type of issues come up with institutionalized children, and how we should tackle it if we come across it?
Yeah. So one of the major concerns that I have come across is the psychological assistance. So, these children placed in these homes, they are not your average child who is going to take a wash when they are told to, going to study, when they are told to. So there are aggressive children, and there are certain ways these children need to be dealt with. But what happens in some of the cases, of course, I've heard, is we fight aggression with aggression. So when the children are aggressive, we call the police or we call the mental hospital, and these children are taken to the mental hospital, sedated. So things like this happen in homes, and these shouldn't happen, because one of such children who has been in the system since she was 1 year old, she's 20 now, she was released at 16. She was raped when she went home. She got pregnant. Her child was taken with a false affidavit. She was 15 when she gave birth. A false affidavit was done saying that she's 27, and her child was given to Sri Lankan parents living abroad. She refused to give her child, but she had no choice because she's under this system. So thereafter she went home to her father, who said that, you're depressed, so what? Here, do some heroin. So up to date, this girl is a heroin addict. She has worked for drug dealers. She is self-harmed, so she has cut herself completely. Her entire hand is cut. So these are setbacks by our system. It's not her fault she got pregnant because she was in the system. It's not her fault that she is an aggressive child. So I think that, I mean, entire Sri Lanka, not only the institutionalized childcare, but whatever legal problem that we get, we see that people are in dire need of mental health assistance. And for Sri Lanka, it's taboo. You know, you tell somebody, okay, why don't we think of counseling? They think, I'm not crazy. You don't have to be crazy to go meet a counselor. So mental health is definitely one of the biggest things that need to, you know, come into the system. So most of the examples that we have come across are with children who have been aggressive, and they have been dealt with aggressively as well. You know, so if there's a fight in a home, they call the police, and the police comes and takes them away. So then they become child victims who now become child offenders, and then they're taken through the system all over again. They hate the system. They hate us. You know, they see a lawyer, they hate us. They hate police officers. So that's not what we want. We want them to try to become better people in society, because there is a whole load of them, like I told you. So only in 2017, if there's 10,000, by now there's definitely much more. So these things, and then where officers manipulate children, so officers within the homes, of course, for things and, you know, for certain benefits, where children are manipulated inside. So children are trained to steal from the stores, or some children who are even older than 18 who continue to stay in these homes as workers now. So they are in charge of the rest of the children. So they are not sent out to go look for jobs. And one of the major problems also is that grey area in our law between the age of 16 and 18. So this is one major concern. At 16, the probation department will send children out saying training. And most of these children are sent to garment factories and large-scale factories where even they wouldn't monitor these systems, monitor the children. So they're just released into society. Nobody calls to check whether they are dead or alive. Most of them will most probably get into drugs or prostitution. So yes, those are some of the concerns.
And we roughly have about 2 more minutes. I'll quickly ask you, so in very brief, what should be done to correct this?
I think the laws need to be implemented, very simply, and a proper aftercare. So there are organizations also who work on aftercare. You come out of a orphanage or an institution, and we help you with, say, jobs, finding a place to live, transition homes, mental health assistance, and all those things. So if government policy can come in for these things, where there's a particular ministry where these children can go in, register themselves, and there's somebody to follow up. Are you okay? Are you sick? Are you dead? You know, these kind of things. If somebody can follow up, that is what's most important, I think.
Yes, so we thank Milani Salpitikoral, attorney at law, the founder of Child Protection Force. And the Child Protection Force is one of the most vibrant civil society organizations in Sri Lanka, which work vehemently to protect the rights of children. They work with the legal framework, they work with police officers, they work with institutions to ensure that children and their rights are protected, and we produce a good citizen to society when the child becomes an adult. So with that, we would like to conclude today's Law and Order program. So on behalf of Sri Lanka Rupavahini, we are thankful for Milani Salpitikoral, attorney at law, for sharing her wealth of knowledge with us on this timely issue. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So with that, we hope to meet you next week at the very same time on Law and Order.